We'll start our session with by chanting our pranam mantras. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarani Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhagevacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Let me share. So we'll start with 42 sloka. Sadhu samsravyam yasha maharajam parikshitam prayopavistam gangayam paritam paramashribihi. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Lovish Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Pranam. Translation. Sukdev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink. Purpose. All transcendental messages are received properly in the chain of disciplic succession. The disciplic succession is called parampara. Unless therefore Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literatures are received through the parampara system, the reception of knowledge is not bona fide. Vyasdeva delivered the message to Sukdev Goswami, and from Sukdev Goswami, Sutta Goswami received the message. One should therefore receive the message of Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami or from his representative, and not from any irrelevant interpreter. Emperor Parikshit received the information of his death in time, and he at once left his kingdom and family and sat down on the bank of Ganges to pass till death. All great sages, rishis, philosophers, mystics, etc., went there due to his imperial position. They offered many suggestions about his immediate duty, and at last it was settled that he would hear from Sukdev Goswami about Lord Krishna. Thus the Bhagavatam was spoken to him. Sripad Shankaracharya, who
Hare
preached
Krishna, Lovish, we'll give
Hare
Hare
Krishna. Yeah, Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Sri Ganesh Prabhu.
Sripad Shankaracharya, who preached Mayavada philosophy and stressed the impersonal feature of the Absolute, also recommended that one must take shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, for there is no hope of gain from debating. Indirectly, Sripad Shankaracharya admitted that what he had preached in the flowery grammatical interpretations of the Vedanta Sutra cannot help one at the time of death. At the critical hour of death, one must recite the name of Govinda. This is the recommendation of all transcendentalists. Sukadeva Goswami had long ago stated the same truth, that at the end one must remember Narayana. That is the essence of all spiritual activists in pursuance of the eternal truth. Srimad Bhagavatam was heard by Emperor Parikshit, and it was recited by Sukadeva Goswami. And both the speaker and the receiver of the message of Bhagavatam were duly delivered by the same medium.
43. Krishneshwadhamupagate dharma-gnanadivisaha kalo nastadrisham esha puranarko adunoditha. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Vanilla Matas.
Hare Krishna. This Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Purport. Lord Krishna has his eternal Dhamma or abode where he eternally enjoys himself in his with his eternal associates and paraphernalia. And his eternal abode is a manifestation of his internal energy, whereas the material world is a manifestation of his external energy. When he descends to the material world, he displays himself with all paraphernalia in his internal potency, which is called Atma Maya. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he descends in his own potency, Atma Maya. His form, name, paraphernalia, abode, etc., are not therefore creations of matter. He descends to reclaim the fallen souls to re-establish codes of religion which are directly enacted by him. Except for God, no one can establish the principles of religion. Either he is suitable person empowered by him can dictate the codes of religion. The real religion means to know God, our relation with him, and our duties in relation with him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving this material body. The conditioned souls who are entrapped by the material energy hardly know all these principles of life. Most of them are like animals and engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. They are mostly engaged in sense enjoyment under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, or salvation. They are still more blind in the present age of quarrel or Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal addition of the animals. They have nothing to do with spiritual knowledge or godly religious life. They are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the jurisdiction of the subtle mind, intelligence, or ego. But they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, and material propensity. They can risk their lives to become a dog or hog just after leaving the present body, for they have completely lost sight of the ultimate aim of life. The personality of Godhead Krishna appeared before us just prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga, and he returned to his eternal home practically at the commencement of Kali Yuga. When he was present, he exhibited everything by his different activities. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita specifically and eradicated all pretentious principles of religiosity. And prior to his departure from the material world, he empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, and thus both the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are like torch bearers for the blind people of this age. In other words, if men in the age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the Samman Guanam of life, Lord Krishna personified. We must therefore accept Srimad Bhagavatam as the direct representation of Krishna. One who can see Srimad Bhagavatam can also see Lord Krishna in person. They are identical. Hare Krishna.
Tatra kirtayato vipraser bhuri tejasa aham chadyagamam tatra nivisastad anugraha to aham va sravyashyami yataditam yatamati. Translation purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Sanjay Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation. O learned Brahmanas, when Sukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from the great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. Purport. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Shri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam if one has heard it from a self-realized great soul like Sukadeva Goswami. One cannot, however, learn Bhagavatam from a bogus hired reciter whose aim of life is to earn some money out of such recitation and employ the earning in sex indulgence. No one can learn Srimad Bhagavatam who is associated with persons engaged in sex life. That is the secret of learning Bhagavatam. nor can one learn Bhagavatam from one who interprets the text by his mundane scholarship. One has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Sukdeva Goswami and no one else. If one at all wants to see Lord Krishna in the pages, that is the process, and there is no alternative. Suta Goswami is a bona fide representative of Sukdeva Goswami because he wants to present the message which he received from the great learned Brahmana. Sukdeva Goswami represented Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father, and so also Suta Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Sukdeva Goswami. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word Nivista means that Suta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. Thus, and the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the first canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Hare Krishna.
Very well. So we're starting the fourth chapter, appearance of Sri Narada. 1.4.1 Vyasam uvacha iti brhuvanam samstuya muninam dirgha satrinam vruddha kulapati sutam bahvracha saunako brave. Translation purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Yogesh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Vyasadeva said, on hearing Suta Goswami speak thus, Shaunaka Muni, who was the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Suta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Purport. In the meeting of learned men, when there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualification of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Sri Shaunaka Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Sri Suta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam, exactly as he heard it from Shukdev Goswami, and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempts to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous acharya, and at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Shaunaka, could estimate the value of speaker Sri Suta Goswami simply by his uttering yatha dhitam and Yatha Mati, and therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original Acharya. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam, so that the real purpose can be served without difficulty. Unless this situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation for extraneous purpose is useless labor both for the speaker and for the audience. Hare Krishna.
This is an important purport which we have to remember. Shaunako vacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadatam Para Katam Bhagavatim Punyam Yat Aha Bhagavan Chuka. Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Abhishek Guru.
Hare Krishna. Saunaka said, O Suta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukadeva Goswami. Purport. Suta Goswami is twice addressed herein by Shaunaka Goswami out of great joy because he and the members of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Sukadeva Goswami. They were not interested in hearing it from a bogus person who would interpret it in his own way to suit his own purpose. Generally, the so-called Bhagavatam reciters are either professional readers or so-called the learned impersonalists who cannot enter into the transcendental personal activities of the Supreme Person. Such impersonalists twist some meanings out of Bhagavatam to suit and support impersonalist views. And the professional readers at once go to the 10th canto to misexplain the most confidential parts of the Lord's pastimes. Neither of these reciters are bona fide persons to recite Bhagavatam. Only one who is prepared to present Bhagavatam in the light of Sukadeva Goswami, and only those who are prepared to hear Sukadeva Goswami and his representatives are bona fide participants in the transcendental discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam.
143. Kasmin yuge pravarteyam sthane vakena hetuna Uta sanchodita Krishna kritavan samgitam muni. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Satya Mata.
Hare Krishna. Translation. In what period and what place was this first begun? And why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? Purport. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is a special contribution of Srila Vyasadeva, there are so many inquiries by the learned Shaunaka Muni. It was known to them that Srila Vyasadeva had already explained the text of the Vedas in various ways up to Mahabharata for the understanding of less intelligent women, Sudras, and fallen members of the family of twice born men. Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all of them because it has nothing to do with anything mundane. So the inquiries are very intelligent and relevant.
144. Tasya putro mahayogi samadrin nirvikalpaka ekantamatir nidro gudo muda ive natya. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Sakshi Mata.
Hare Krishna. Translation. His Vyas Deva's son was a great devotee and equibalanced monist whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. Purport. Srila Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul, and thus he remained always alert, not to be trapped by the illusory energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, this alertness is very lucidly explained. The liberated soul and the conditioned soul have different engagements. The liberated soul is always engaged in the progressive path of spiritual attainment, which is something like a dream for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul cannot imagine the actual engagements of the liberated soul, while the conditioned soul thus dreams about spiritual engagements. The liberated soul is awake. Similarly, the engagement of a conditioned soul appears to be a dream for the liberated soul. A conditioned soul and a liberated soul may apparently be on the same platform, but factually they are differently engaged, and their attention is always alert, either in sense enjoyment or in self-realization. The conditioned soul is absorbed in matter, whereas the liberated soul is completely indifferent to matter. This indifference is explained as follows.
145. दृष्टवान् योऽन्तं ऋषिम् आत्मजम् अपि अनङ्गम् देवो हि प्रिया परिदादुर्नासुतस्य चित्रम् तद्वीक्ष्य पृच्छति मुनौ जगदुस्तवासि श्रीगुं विदानातु सुतस्य विकट विविक्तदृष्ट Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna Pushkala. Please continue.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, translation purport.
Beautiful
Krishna.
young damsels.
You are not audible. Hare Krishna.
Now am I audible?
Yeah, please.
While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth. Although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked, but they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them, made no distinction between male and female. But the sage made such distinctions. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 5.18, it is said that a learned sage looks equally on a learned and gentle Brahmana, a Chandala, dog eater, a dog, or a cow, due to his spiritual vision. Srila Sukadeva Goswami attained that stage. Thus, he did not see a male or female. He saw all living entities in different dress. The ladies who were bathing could understand the mind of a man simply by studying his demeanor. Just as by looking at a child, one can understand how innocent he is. Sukadeva Goswami was a younger boy, 16 years old, and therefore all the parts of his body were developed. He was naked also, and so were the ladies. But because Sukadeva Goswami was transcendental to sex relations, he appeared very innocent. The ladies, by their special qualifications, could sense this at once, and therefore they were not very concerned about him. But when his father passed, the ladies quickly dressed. The ladies were exactly like his children or grandchildren, yet they reacted to the presence of Vyasadeva according to the social custom because Srila Vyasadeva played the part of a householder. A householder has to distinguish between a male and female, otherwise he cannot be a householder. One should therefore attempt to know the distinction between body and soul without any attachment for male and female. As long as such distinction is there, one should not try to become a sannyasi like Sukadeva Goswami. At least theoretically, one must be convinced that a living entity is neither male nor female. The outward dress is made up of matter by material nature to attract the opposite sex and thus keep one entangled in material existence. A liberated soul is above this perverted distinction. He does not distinguish between one living being and another. For him, they are all one and the same spirit. The perfection of this spiritual vision is the liberated stage, and Srila Sukadeva Goswami attained that stage. Srila Vyasadeva was also in the transcendental stage, but because he was in the householder's life, he did not pretend to be a liberated soul as a matter of custom. Hare Krishna.
146. Katham alakshita paure samprapta guru dhangalan unmata mukha chadva vicharan jagaja sahve. Translation purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna Shala Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation. How was the Srila Sukadeva, the son of Sa, recognized by citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapura, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb or retarded. Purport. The present city of Delhi was formerly known as Hastinapura because it was first established by King Hasti. Goswami Sukadeva, after leaving his paternal home, was roaming like a madman, and therefore it was very difficult for the citizens to recognize him in his exalted position. As sage is not therefore recognized by sight, but by hearing, one should approach a sadhu or great sage not to see him, but to hear him. If one is not prepared to hear the words of a sadhu, there is no profit. Sukadeva Goswami was a sadhu who could speak on transcendental activities of Lord. He did not satisfy the whims of ordinary citizens. He was recognized when he spoke on the subject of Bhagavatam, and he never attempted jugglery like magician. Outwardly, he appeared to be a retarded, dumb madman, but in fact, he was the most elevated transcendental personality. Hare Krishna.
One portion. Katam va pandave yasya rajarshirmunina saha samvada samabhut tata yatra isha satvati shruti. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Lovish Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas Bhagavatam to be sung to him? Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is stated here as the essence of the Vedas. It is not an imaginary story as it is sometimes considered by unauthorized men. It is also called Sutta Samhita or the Vedic hymn spoken by Srila Sukadeva Goswami, the great liberated sage.
148. Tagodohana matram hi gruheshu gruhamedinam avekshate mahabhagas tirti kurvam stadashramam. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Sri Ganesh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. He Sukadeva Goswami was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence. Purport. Sukadeva Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence for more than half an hour, and he would just take alarms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Sukadeva Goswami is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of the preachings, the message of Godhead, should learn that they have no business with householders save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alarms from the householder should be the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to the worldly man. For one who is the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide.
148. Abhimanyu sudam sudha prahur bhagavatottamam tasya janma mahascharyam karmani cha gruhinina. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Vandana Mata.
Hare Krishna. It is said that Parikshit Maharaj is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. The birth of Parikshit Maharaj is wonderful because in the womb of his mother, he was protected by the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. His activities are also wonderful because he chastised Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow. To kill cows means to end human civilization. He wanted to protect cow from being killed by the great representative of silk. His death is also wonderful because he got previous notice of his death, which is wonderful for any mortal being, and thus he prepared himself for passing away by sitting down on the bank of Ganges and hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. During all these days, he heard Bhagavatam. He did not take food or drink or nor sleep for a moment. So everything about him is wonderful and his activities are worth hearing. The desire is expressed herein to hear about him in detail. Hare Krishna.
1410. सा सम्राट कस्य वाहेतो पाण्डुनामानवर्धना प्रायोपवस्वष्टो गायम् अनादृत्याद्रिप्रियम्. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Sanjay Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? Purport. Maharaja Parikshit was the emperor of the world and all the seas and oceans, and he did not have to take the trouble to acquire such a kingdom by his own effort. He inherited it from his grandfathers, Maharaja Yudhishthira and brothers. Besides that, he was going well in the administration and was worthy of the good names of his forefathers. Consequently, there was nothing undesirable in his opulence and administration. Then why should he give up all these favorable circumstances and sit down on the bank of the Ganges, fasting till death? This is astonishing, and therefore all were eager to know the cause. Hare Krishna.
Thanks. Today I was hearing to one of the lecture where it is mentioned that a cow should be carefully protected. When a cow is properly protected according to the Vedic Shastras, that Goshala is none other than Goloka Vrindavan. The protected cow shed is Goloka. So when we protect the cow, our spiritual life skyrockets like anything. So when I was reading this purport, finishing the cow means finishing the human civilization. So we should all take a pledge to help in cow protection, sell cows and make them happy. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji and Mataji, for joining today's session. Let us meet again on Tuesday. I recommend everyone to read the 141 verse. So I think it's a very good purport. Of course, every purport is very good. So one qualification of one who has qualification for congratulating a speaker is very aptly mentioned. So I would recommend to go through again one verse. Very good. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripa sindhu Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Sri Ganesh Prabhu. Hare Krishna Pushkara. Hare Krishna JS Prabhu. Hare Krishna Sakshi Mataji.
Hare Krishna.